Hey guys, welcome back. Let's talk about a healing journey. Let's talk about breaking up with someone. Let's talk about heartbreak. Let's talk about going through divorce. Let's talk about narcissistic relationships. If you are in the process of healing and you are beginning this kind of phase, there's definitely a lot of excitement and there's a lot of scary things. There's a lot of ebbing and flowing. There's a lot of highs and then we experience a lot of lows. Now in the beginning, there definitely might be some fear, but there's a lot of excitement. You're reading the blogs, you're watching the videos, you're taking the courses, you're doing the coaching, and you're learning so much information that on sometimes it might actually feel a little overwhelming, but for the most part, you are really excited because things are actually starting to make sense now, whereas they didn't before. With this process, there's something really beautiful that happens, and it's called movement. You start to move forward. You start to move away from this person, this relationship. You start gaining some clarity, and this movement makes you feel hopeful. That even if you're in a little bit of pain right now, you still feel somewhat excited about the future because this movement is happening. As you start moving forward, you start to see that you're changing and you're growing, and it happens actually fast in the beginning where you're educating yourself, you've had some distance now from this person, life's starting to get a little bit better, and then you start to gain a lot of momentum, and then it starts going really fast where maybe even you're starting to date again, or you're, moving into a new space, whatever that looks like, and it's exciting. You're actually excited for your future, and you're planning and you're goal setting and you're working on losing that 20 pounds and you're getting a little bit out of your comfort zone. You start to see that this could actually be a blessing in disguise, and you're excited. Now, everyone experiences this phase and everyone loves it because you're on a high and things are improving. Now, the next part, most people become very confused because they tend to kind of plateau, and they feel like they're getting stuck almost, where they're not growing as fast. They're not as hopeful. They are getting really, really scared, where now it's actually debilitating them. This is when life is starting to kind of slow down, and honestly, the real feelings that maybe you were even masking through some of that excitement in the beginning are starting to come to the surface. These are those periods where we go through some deep sadness, and this is really where sometimes that dark night of the soul comes through, and we have to kind of sit for a second in a little bit of this pain that we're feeling. And of course, we still felt the pain in that first phase of growth. You still have momentum and you're still growing, but it's not happening as fast as it did in the beginning phase. Now you're starting to slow down, and the growth is happening in littler spurts than in the beginning, you being super excited and diving into everything and ready to set goals, and you just have this excitement in the beginning that you're kind of starting to lose. This is oftentimes when we start to feel stuck, or we start to feel like we're actually not growing, or that maybe this wasn't a good decision, or maybe there isn't a blessing that comes of this. Now, this is usually when people get very discouraged and they actually reach out for help. Now, what most people don't see is that this is actually the beginning of your healing journey. See, you thought the beginning was just leaving this relationship, going through this breakup, and that stuff was hard, don't get me wrong, and it's very, very painful. But you go through that and you get some distance and you get a little excited, and then this middle ground is really where the bulk of work actually comes into play. And this is where you're just starting this now, where that high is kind of gone and now you're just settling in. And the settling in is where you're going to really do all of the work that's actually going to change you. Of course, you might learn things about that previous relationship, about that person, about yourself, and that stuff will change you as well. You're educating yourself, but that beginning phase is almost like the beginning phase of any relationship. And this is really the relationship with yourself now that you're starting to have. And that beginning phase was really fun and exciting. It's the honeymoon phase, right? Where we're getting some clarity, we're moving ourselves away, we're starting to rebuild. But now at some point in every relationship, the dust kind of settles, the glitz and glamour kind of goes away, and you settle into the actual relationship that you're going to have with this person. This is now the relationship you're starting to have with yourself. The reason why people get stuck is because they oftentimes don't know what to do. They often get stuck and really feel this sadness and sometimes depression and confusion, and they don't trust and they don't believe, is because now they're left to their own devices, and now they really have to take care of themselves. A lot of people don't see that. They don't see what's really going on. They just see that, wait a minute, all of a sudden I was like on this high and I was starting to feel good. And yeah, I was getting over some stuff and I was dealing with heartbreak, and that's not fun. And I went through pain, but I thought that was the pain. I thought that was the lesson. And it is. It's a good part of the overall lessons that you're learning and the overall growth that your soul is taking. But this is the time where it's just about you. This is where the transformation is going to happen. This is the part where you're actually going to break open and you're really going to shed that skin, and you're going to move away from all those things that you used to do and think and say and all the wounds that you carry around with you. That's the stuff that's going to start to get healed, but only you can do that. Now, here's something that most people don't want to hear. This is actually what you asked for. On some levels, this is what needs to happen in order for you to get to where you actually want to be. The problem is that when we ask for something, it's not always wrapped in a pretty little blue, Tiffany box with a little white bow attached to it. It's usually given to us by giving us some pain, by giving us some solitude, by making us be alone, by making us sit with our thoughts and feelings, us having to learn how to actually do this stuff that we've never really done before in order for significant change to happen. Now, just here's a side note. All those times that you wonder, is this person changing? Are they actually treating this new person better when it comes to narcissistic relationships and discards and new supplies and all that stuff? Look at what you're doing. Look at what you've already done. Look at what you're about to enter into. Do most people sign up to do this, especially voluntarily? No, they don't. Instead, what they do is they just dive into the next relationship, or they just keep suppressing what it is that they really think and how they feel, and then they become addicted to things, and then they're depressed, or they're just consuming their lives with all these things that they think are going to fill them up, when in reality they're not going to. So you're actually doing some significant work right here, whereas most people don't. Now, the reason why you are stuck and the reason why you're starting to plateau, the reason why you might even be dipping a little bit, is because now this is your actual test. This is life's way of saying, look, if you really want to change, if you really want something to be different, you need to start slowing down. And I'm going to make it so you do slow down. I'm going to make it so you are alone. I'm going to make it so that you have to figure out how to do this stuff on your own. It's life's way of saying, like, look, if you want to learn and if you want things to change, you're going to have to take a pause for a second. Now, it's in the pause that we learn we don't really have the control that we think we have over life. It's in the pausing that we learn how to be mindful, to be self-aware, to accept responsibility for what you think and how you feel, and having to give yourself those things. It's in the pausing that you slow down enough to realize that, oh my God, here comes every worry and fear that I've ever had. And sometimes that's where the depression comes into play, is because everything that has been just sitting at the bottom of you now comes rising to the surface, and you have no choice but to deal with it. This pause causes you to really work that muscle of believing, of self-worth, of trust, of faith, of actually not just setting goals and achieving them, and law of attraction and self-worth and all those things. Those things are important 100%. But this is more about being actually at peace. Because it's never ever going to be about the goal you're looking to achieve. It's always about the feeling that you want to feel through this goal, through this thing, because you think this thing or this goal is going to give you this feeling. So it's about getting to the feeling before you actually get the thing. It's about learning how to surrender to the fact that you don't have control, that you have to wait, that you have to be patient, that you have to pause, that you have to be alone, that you have to be left to your own devices and having to figure it out. This is life's way of teaching you how to have all of those things, those feelings, those things that you desire already within yourself, regardless of having those things on the outside. It's about learning how to be at peace with where you are, no matter with what you have or what's going on. This is true self-development. This is actually self-love. This is the stuff that you were supposed to learn. This is the nuts and bolts of what mental health is really about. And you're not going to learn it until you have that pause. Now, the question becomes, can you pause? Can you trust? Can you believe? Can you work on yourself? Can you learn how to parent yourself? Can you be still and still be happy? This is where you now start your spiritual journey. You might think that you're stuck. You may think that you're not really growing or nothing's changing. And I remember that phase. I remember just being and thinking like, oh my God, I was getting such good momentum and now I just don't feel like anything's changing. And it almost kind of like made me want to like dip back down into like not believing, not trusting, and worrying. And I had to learn how to just be and how to be happy regardless of me not being yet where I wanted to be. And I had to trust and I had to believe and I had to do all those things that require a lot of deep inner work that most people don't do. What I want you to really understand from this is, number one, you're just entering the phase of healing. Number two, you're going to start really learning some deep stuff that's going to help you for the rest of your life. It's going to help you to get closer to the things that you want in your life and set those goals and achieve them, absolutely. But you're also going to learn how to find inner peace with regardless of what's going on. And that is really essential because life's not going to always go in the flow that you want it to. It's not going to always happen when you want it to. Actually, it never happens in the exact way that you would like it to happen. So learning how to kind of go with the tides and just being able to be still and be happy regardless of what's going on is huge, and it's important. And that's what you didn't have before. Now, if you understand why it's so important, look back on your life. Look back on the things that you didn't do. Look back on the relationships that you accepted when you know you probably shouldn't have. Look back on the person that you know you should have set boundaries with and you didn't. Look at the time you were home on a Friday night and you were so depressed by it that you didn't enjoy that moment with yourself and the amount of fun that you could have been having and at peace you could have actually felt. So it will 100% change your life. You just have to trust the process. The beauty that comes of this is that you realize that all the things that you actually desire in life, you can experience the highs of those things right now with what you have. That any person or anything should never dictate how you feel. And then you start to have more control over your happiness and realize that I can actually create that for myself regardless of what's going on in my life. And that's inner peace. So I hope you have enjoyed this video. I hope it gave you some motivation, some faith in trusting this process and knowing that you will eventually get to where you want to be. The fun part is obviously hindsight and looking back and saying, okay, I see that growth. I see how I changed. I didn't see that in the middle. I didn't, but I did trust and I learned really extraordinary lessons that I still use to this day that I don't regret having to sit still for a minute to learn those lessons because they wholeheartedly have changed the course of my life forever. So if you have to go through a little bit of uncomfortableness, if you have to go through some gut-wrenching pain, if you have to go through really learning this stuff and cracking that soul and heart open in order to really shed all that skin, believe me when I tell you it is worth all of the pain that you have to go through. But of course, we don't want to go back to that place. But also remember this, you're no different than anyone else. So if I can do it, if Sue down the street can do it, if Billy can do it, then absolutely you can do it too. So I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope it gave you some comfort and I'll see you in the next one.